So before we start this speech, I'm going to explain where I'm at a little bit. This is my grandmother's old house. We as a family built it for her before she passed away, and this is her house. And I'm luckily able to access this for my speech. The proper woman who learned to live life the way she wanted to. This is how I would describe my grandmother, Madeline Barber. She was a wonderful woman, but her opinions and her life were very structured. And as she had children and a grandchild, her opinions started changing. So this goes out to my grandmother, the person in the story with the best character arc. Let's start by talking about her childhood a little bit. My grandmother had a very strict childhood. Her mom, my great-grandmother, was very into you having the perfect body, perfect stance, and you have to know how to cook and clean and take care of a whole house. And for the men, it was the complete opposite. You have to be strong and powerful, and you have to be able to work all the time. This wasn't how my grandmother wanted to live, but she had to learn how to live like that. She was not the perfect hourglass shape. She did not like playing dress up like all the other girls, and she didn't enjoy all the cooking and cleaning, but she did learn how to do it. So when she had children, she wanted them to be well taken care of by her, but she also didn't want them to feel bad for who they were. This was something she took very seriously. But it was very difficult for her because she did still have a set of outlined rules in her mind. They must be Catholic, and they must stay in school. Which, of course, as she pushed this on her children, my uncle and my father, they did not want to follow these rules. They went to a Catholic school up in New York City, and that just did not go well. They wanted to start fights, they didn't want to attend school, and they knew pretty much everything they needed to learn at a very young age. They got through education very easily. So they moved down here to Virginia. At this point, my grandmother started understanding that my father and my uncle were greasers. They didn't want to go to church anymore. They stopped attending church. They devoted themselves to work, and she started having to change her thought patterns a little bit. Her children were successful. They weren't successful in the most stereotypical successful way, but they were successful. So how could she be angry? And then it got even worse because I was born. So from greaser-esque and learning to live with that to a child born out of wedlock, one of her worst nightmares. But of course, everything changed for her then as well. She met me. She came to the hospital and she met me. I was under 4 pounds, maybe 5-ish pounds, and I could fit in the palm of your hand. Her heart melted. She could not be angry about the whole born out of wedlock thing anymore. Her opinions continued changing. She was okay with it. She wasn't like gung-ho, have sex outside of marriage, but she wasn't visibly angry about it anymore. As I started growing up, though, I took on my mother's opinions because, of course, my mother raised me, which were very different from my grandmother's. This is a problem my mother and my grandmother had for a long time. They did not get along because their opinions were very different, very politically different sides. But because I was so young, I was able to take on both sides of the story and hold them together and make sense of them together instead of separately. Not everything needed to be seen as black and white in my mind. So when I started discussing it with both my grandmother and my mother, I was able to moderate it and make it make sense from both sides. which eventually led to group conversations that were no longer arguments and more or less just an enjoyable time of understanding each other's opinions. And then, after that, she passed away. I can happily say to this day, though, when someone says, old dogs can't learn new tricks, I don't believe it. My grandmother spent her whole life learning new tricks. And she did it successfully. And she ended up in her own little apartment, taking care of herself and a dog, and taking care of her church and her friends and people she cared about, with absolutely no problems, even after her childhood. And then on top of that, having to learn through life through her children and me. She ended up enjoying her life more than anything else, and enjoying the people she was around, instead of feeling the need to fight them for her own opinions.